Hello. Welcome back to Chat About It, Don't Shout About It with me, Rachel, the Queen of the Woke, as crowned by one of my haters. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to my channel. I'm trying to get to 1,200 subscribers. Can I do it? Who knows? But thank you to everyone who has subscribed to me already. I really couldn't do it without you. Last week, I made a video in where I looked at the crimes of Stephen Moffat, Chris Chibnall, the Destroyer, and Russell T Davies, the Mega Destroyer. This was in response to criticism that I'd been way too picky and harsh on Shooty and not the writers. Now, please refer to my Doctor Who playlist and my Shooty playlist to find out what I actually really said about him and the writing team, because coming in and just watching one video doesn't actually give you the whole perspective of my full entire opinion. However, I thought, why not? Let's look into it. So this is part two. Whilst it is really easy to pin everything onto one person per se, it is actually a combination of things that makes plots and stories fail. I do acknowledge that as well as, but seeing as I was taught to specifically look at the writers, that's what I will continue to do. Now, I've established that it really truly starts with Moffat sowing the seeds for the current state of the show, even though I actually think statistically he is a much better showrunner than, Russell T Davies put together. That is my opinion. I do actually think he is a better writer. Chibs the Destroyer annihilated the canon. However, there were some doctory moments that, still sounded like the Doctor, but things were gradually being phased out, I think. RTD, the Mega Destroyer, has taken everything the Boys Brigade has done and solidified it into the realms of hard canon, if we can even call it that. He didn't even bother to half human rectify it like he did with the McGann when he first started running the show. Trust me, that was one element back when he brought it back that I was actually pleased to see gone. What replaced it was a much greater mess, reeling off the by generation nonsense and into the Christmas episode. Now, I'm going to miss things 100%. So please leave anything I miss in the comments below. Also remember, like I have said, I've done videos that go into much more detail than probably what I'm going to be able to do here. So please be sure to check those out as well to make sure that you actually have a well-established a form of opinion about my opinion. RTD wanted, with the Disney money, to bring goblins, a song, and once again, the overdone Impossible Girl storyline. Now, one thing I will say about the series in particular is that actually, in general, overall, the ideas were there. And that is one thing I've maintained throughout the entirety of my reviews. They just were not executed very well, which I have also maintained throughout my entire reviews. Gaping plot holes everywhere and a total rewrite of the Doctor himself, plus jarring moments that were not actually needed or were thrown in there, excuse me, as a way of addressing quote unquote controversial issues without really addressing them. The church on Ruby Road set up one of the biggest and pointless MacGuffins that never paid off. This was set up, in my opinion, way too early. From what it was implied at the end of the giggle, we were pretty much going to get just some time travel and sci-fi stories because this doctor has supposedly let go of all the baggage that he has been carrying, yet seems to be still carrying that baggage. Now, one thing that was right was introducing the doctor earlier in, the church on Ruby Road. Whilst it was in the most ridiculous way possible, dancing in a nightclub and having a snowman land on him, somehow miraculously predicting the answer to an engagement, it was actually right to introduce him earlier. The sonic screwdriver is a terrible plot device. I must say it looks even worse now. Apparently, this new mouse mat is replacing the problematic one that looks like a pew pew, so to speak, despite RTD 1.0 using it every 5 seconds in his first run. Now, thankfully, we don't actually see it very much throughout the entire series. Maybe RTD 2.0 was actually inspired by Jodie's phallic one that kept breaking. I just wish it was gone altogether because the over reliance on it actually deadens any potential amazing plot lines that could potentially exist. They dive into the more fantasy elements in Doctor Who, and yes, I know it's done fantasy before, and the lack of sci fi, which is the main crux of the show, I believe has actually impacted the series. Oh, and of course, history is also a main crux of the show as well. Now, when the show began in 1963, back with William Hartnell, the first Doctor, it was to focus on the educational approach with history and science fiction merged together for families. With the introduction of the Pan's Labyrinth goblins in the church on Ruby Road that looked like they didn't have much money spent on them at all, a baby girl in peril, and a random song for the purposes of filler rather than creative writing left for a very mediocre start to the series. The only benefit of this particular episode is that this probably was the closest version, and I'm saying this lightly, that we get to see of the Doctor, because at least he actually resolves the situation with next to no help from anybody else. I can count on one hand with this particular series where the Doctor resolves the situation by himself twice: The Church on Ruby Road and Space Babies. And I'm not really going to count Sutek much at all because it's actually Ruby that puts the leash around his neck. And theoretically, that wouldn't work because she surely should have been turned to dust because she was the MacGuffin. She wasn't the impossible girl. Her mother was. Now, a little bit later on in this particular video, I'm going to give you a running order that I actually think would suit the entire series a lot better than what we had plot-wise, structure-wise, that sort of thing. It's just an opinion. You can offer your own input on that if you would like to. How did everyone feel about snot monsters? Now, for me personally, mixed with the Look Who's Talking, it's essentially childish toilet humor that is extremely carefree and would appear to be aimed at 3 years old. That's what it felt like to me. Now, before anyone says if you don't like it, don't watch, please do check out my Duty playlist. I'm a lot fairer there. There's one thing I've noticed about the series is how it doesn't seem to let people think for themselves. Yes, I'm talking about messaging. Towards the end of the Space Babies, we go straight into throwing in a few random lines about being immigrants and then left it at that randomly out of the blue. It just happened. Now, Millie Gibson had said that the series addresses controversial issues, but with the silliness of the Space Babies, the controversial issue address is so jarring and so random. Space Babies could have been easily made into an entire metaphorical piece about immigration if you really wanted to go down that way. That would have been very easy to achieve. Now, other controversial lines that jar the plot appear in The Devil's Cord, the brief they them throwaway lines that the maestro says in the 1920s that actually in the 1920s would have been considered a very unnatural way of talking and actually extremely rude. I hate to break it to you though, the fact that this pronoun correction was put there in there for the sake of it wasn't the overall issue for me here. It was the fact that it was there and then it was not used throughout the rest of the story. In my opinion, if you're going to do something like that, then be consistent and have it all the way through or not at all. Now, the fact that this was a musical episode riled up a lot of people. The song at the end just took up valuable storytelling time. It really did. And the idea behind the maestro was there, but whilst I'm not critiquing the actors here directly and more the choices and the writing with the powers that be with RTD, this was a complete, total miscast. Remember, if you like the episodes, that is absolutely fine. You are allowed to like them. The structure of the episode was also very off. The Doctor who I will obviously come to much later on in this video, should have been the one saving the day, not the Beatles. In fact, the lack of times the Doctor does not save the day in this entire series is absolutely atrocious. The Doctor is supposed to be the hero of the story, not the companions. I'll give it to him in 73 yards because that was a circumstance that wasn't they couldn't avoid it. They are to have input, the companions, in potentially saving the day. And so they should, but the amount of times he fails and someone else takes over is absolutely bonkers. Children and teenagers need a hero on TV they can look up to, not a doctor who cries and can't seem to function at all. It's when Boom came along, written by Stephen Moffat, who is a consistently better writer than RTD, that I thought we would actually get back to some sense of normality, but we didn't. Once again, the ideas were there, but they were poorly executed. Religion was way too easily bashed, and that's what it was. You can't deny that. It was bashed openly. Religion was bashed with no juxtaposition against it offered. There was no pushback, and the characters should have actually been having some sort of pushback. It would have made for a much more interesting dialogue. What's more is that the Doctor also runs out of the TARDIS carelessly. It should have been the other way around. He carelessly runs out and stands on that landmine. This bottled episode, I think, was probably for Shooty's benefit to hone in his performance, I would say. Give him some time to work out a direction he's going in, but it fails. The counterbalance, the tears, the panic, that should all have been happening with Ruby. He should have had the brains and the balls with the entire episode, but because like Moffat didn't write it that way, the whole episode just fell completely flat. Stylistically, it probably was a better one, but I think that lies more with the first 15 minutes of 73 yards. 73 yards was probably the most Doctor Who type of story we got in the entire series. And what's concerning about that was that the Doctor was barely in it. You had the horror, you had the mystery, you had the tension. This could have easily been a bottled episode once again. I think Ruby should have remained in the countryside in Wales, I think it was, and she shouldn't have left. The script underutilized the cast of that entire episode. That's the fault of the writer. We could have seen the story be solved from Ruby's side, and then even potentially the Doctors. You could have made it a two-parter. There would have been absolutely nothing wrong with that. Listen, like I say, I'm barely scraping the surface. Honestly, there's so much more that I have said in my reviews of the series. Dot and Bubble was superficially focusing on technology, whilst its implied message didn't really come across to everyone. Racism, internalized racism. Why would they go with someone that looks like him? The bigger thing about this is generally the Doctor being an alien and used to this treatment, this kind of treatment like this. He generally would have been extremely nonplussed. He would have taken it in his stride, perhaps ignored it. Not in this case. He got angry, an outburst that in many respects the Doctor can't save everyone, and that is part of his being. And I think this episode really did forget that. And I still can't get it out of my head that TikTok of the woman that I covered several weeks ago now, where she said she needed to work on her internalized racism because she didn't get the point of the episode. Entertainment should be fun and not to make someone think they are an internalized. Rogue was also a character assassination on the Doctor, our first mega foray into history, and it was more of a mine's bigger than yours romp. Randy, who? The Doctor isn't a sexual being. Before you say Rose, may I remind you he never admitted it. Why? Time Lords live centuries. Humans live decades. I don't even like the Doctor and River Song being together. Yes, I am that adamant that the Doctor is not a sexual being. The Doctor, in Rogue, should have been focusing on aliens, not flirting. We were expected to believe that the Doctor was in love, totally besotted within 45 minutes-ish. The companion and the aliens were secondary to the plot. It was careless writing, and once again, the companion is abandoned, and the Doctor becomes a coward with a choice that he needed to make. That was his fault, and that's the writer's fault for not making him do what the Doctor should do. The Legend of Ruby Sunday had some of the better intensity, but the issue here with this was that there was too much information released prior to release. So it became extremely obvious that it was Sutek returning. Throughout the entire series, we were expecting multiple pantheons of the gods. We got the Toymaker, we got Maestro, and that was it. That was all to lead up to the intense reveal of Sutek. There should have been multiple pantheons of the gods in order to reveal Sutek, but there just wasn't. By the way, also, Sutek has apparently been sitting upon the TARDIS since Tom Baker defeated him in the Pyramids of Mars, which makes absolutely no sense, as they failed in the episode to explain why he wasn't seen by anyone going to and from the TARDIS prior to this. Just ridiculous. So this version of poorly animated Sutek, where most of the money went, was just appropriated. In Egyptian mythology, he is the god of death, head of the jackal in the story Pyramids of Mars. That must have been problematic because of the cultural appropriation reference in the TARDIS, so they changed him. Susan Triad was also a badly formed portmanteau of Sutek, although RTD the Mega Destroyer believes that it's an anagram. The build-up of her potentially being Susan, the Doctor's granddaughter, was purposely done as part of a fan service to try and keep the classic fans absolutely hooked, except they're losing a lot of classic fans. And for a show that doesn't allow its lead to look at past Doctors, they don't half like focusing on past characters, don't they? Although I am sure there's loads more. And there is, because I know I've covered it in all of my videos. Ruby was the worst MacGuffin I've ever seen from RTD. The impossible girl was an ordinary woman pointing at a sign. That's what perplexed Sutek, a superior, intelligent being, got stumped by someone who is so ordinary. If you're going to set up a MacGuffin that big, then you need payoff that's the same level or much bigger. I thought all writers knew how to do that. Let's talk about the Doctor. The Doctor is a man of many talents. He is smart, pompous, has empathy. Often at times lonely, the companions always leave in the end, which is a major point. He is a man of moral standing of what is right and wrong, prefers to use discussion as opposed to firearms and fists. He intervenes on a regular basis, even though he is not supposed to. He can be at loggerheads with his companions, in particular human companions. He is brave, faces danger head on, and has been known to go into danger. He is asexual. His sexuality was never at the forefront for discussion. There are many other traits of the Doctor that I have not mentioned. On top of that, each Doctor has a different facet, whilst maintaining those above traits. Hartnell was abrupt, Troughton was a little foolish joker, Pertwee was a caped crusader, Tom Baker was quick and cautious, Davison was somewhat arrogant but the most humane, Colin Baker, was very pragmatic, McCoy was a manipulator and teacher, a bit of a clown in the beginning as well. McGann was suave, Eccleston was the adventurer, Tennant was the seether, Smith was curious, Capaldi was abrupt like Hartnell, and even Whittaker gave off the sense of alien when she couldn't empathise. Although I still don't count her Doctor as part of the canon, but if you like her Doctor, that is of course absolutely fine. Jodie is actually a very talented actress. This version of the Doctor is the furthest removed, crying nearly every single episode, randy, gay, changing outfits. Rogue was supposed to be a love, still not calling back to the previous episode, calling Mel bonkers. She was never bonkers. She was a breath of fresh air when she joined. This doctor is not smart. He runs away from everything. He is not a good empathizer and more interested in flirting. He is irresponsible. He can't save anyone. He has regressed in his age. He is a danger to his companions and people around him. He has no pomp. He uses language of today that you never hear younger people speak. So by today, I mean today, like babes and things like that. He's extremely rude. What we see is a pure character assassination. So I also have a recommended running order for this series because I actually don't think the one that they put it out with actually works. It feels very off. So it is the Starbeast, Wobbly Yonder, the Giggle, all fine in running order. Then we should have had Space Babies because it was light-hearted and it could have been easily done at Christmas where people are not really paying that much attention. Cut the snow altogether. 73 yards. That should have been the first episode of the new series. It should have been a two-parter. Ruby's side, the doctor's side. I say put it early on because obviously Shooty was not available, so it would have been easier. Then we should have Boom because there is a reference made to Ruby seeing the solar system for the first time. And structure-wise, that makes more sense to have it early on. Dot and Bubble. Back-to-back Dr. Light episodes are not good. Then Rogue, so get that out of the way, get that done and dusted. The Devil's Cord, make this the start of the Impossible Girl storyline with the snow and everything that you see happening with Ruby there. Make that the start, bring it in then, 4 episodes from the end, so to speak. Then you could have actually had the church on Ruby Road, putting it a lot later, where they actually start to investigate because of the Devil's Cord, what happened in the Devil's Cord. So there's obviously some kind of connection there. Then the Legend of Ruby Sunday, keep the mystery going. And then, of course, the Empire of Death. There is loads more. So make sure, as I've said already, check out my other reviews because they are so much more detailed. Let me know what you think. Chat about it. Don't chat about it. I'll be back tomorrow at 4 p.m. Like, share, and subscribe. Thank you very much for watching. Bye-bye.